Hello everybody, it's Elagatua. It's been a long time since I've been able to record one of these videos, so I'm really excited to be back and recording this one. This is going to be the semifinals of the Smacky Cup 3. That's right, we have finally made it to the semifinals. We're getting close to the end now, and this is going to be a match between myself and Sidewinder on the map Redemption World. Now, if you're looking at this map and you think it seems familiar, and you've been watching my videos for a long time, then it probably is familiar because I covered this map in one of the first videos that I ever did in a game against Starflash. I'll try to make sure that video gets linked in the description. But the good news for some of you, I guess, is that we don't need to do a full map breakdown because I believe I broke it down in the other video. So instead in this video, I'm going to be talking about more of the specific dynamics of the matchup that we end up playing, as well as some more, I guess, new thoughts that I've had about the map in the period of time between my last video and now. And it's been quite a long time. I think it's been more than a year since I first recorded that other video. And I like to think that I'm a stronger player than I was at that time, even though I think I was doing pretty well when that video was recorded. But I've learned a lot of things and tried to continue to always up my game and learn from every single game that I play. And so hopefully some of my newer insight into this map will be interesting, even if we don't need to spend a whole ton of time covering all of the details. So I think where we should probably start with for this video is talking about the tiers. This was a tier 2 matchup, but this was actually a new tier 2 matchup, which is a little bit unusual. New tier 2, if you've not heard this term before, is tier 2 plus Von Bolt. And traditionally, Von Bolt has been enabled as a pick or unbanned as a pick for maps that have pretty high income. And the idea here is that when you have really high income, your COs like Olaf and Eagle, they're generating enough money that their expensive powers are still going to come online pretty fast, and they're going to come online frequently enough that they have a chance to fight against the really strong day-to-day bonuses that Von Bolt gets. That being said, this map is a little bit of a strange choice, I guess, for a new tier 2 matchup because the overall income on this map is not especially high. We've seen new tier 2 on maps like Stalingrad, which I think has I forget the exact half map income, but it's something in like the mid 20Ks, like 25K or 26K, maybe even a little bit higher than that. But for Redemption World, I believe split map is either 21 or 22K. So it's considerably lower than those high income maps. And because of that, I think that Von Bolt is even better than he would be in a higher income map when going against some of the other tier 2 COs like Olaf and like Eagle, because when there's less money on the board, there's going to be more days that you're going to have to spend fighting to build up all that charge before the superpowers come online that are very powerful for Olaf and Eagle. And so if there's more days before that happens, then that means that there's more time for Von Bolt to exercise that day-to-day advantage of having plus 10 offense and plus 10 defense. And so that just makes it very, very difficult for Olaf and Eagle to compete on this map when Von Bolt is allowed. So it's probably not a huge surprise to discover that both myself and my opponent picked Von Bolt for this matchup. So we are going to be playing in a Von Bolt mirror matchup, and this matchup does actually have some unusual properties. You might think that, well, Von Bolt has +10 offense and +10 defense, but if you're going against another Von Bolt that also has +10 offense and +10 defense, then it just kind of all cancels out, and you're just playing like a normal vanilla matchup, and you've got some superpowers, and that's all there is to it. But that's not exactly true. And the reason for that is that +10 defense is actually stronger mathematically than the +10% offense. So they don't just cancel each other out. Ultimately, the +10 defense is going to make cities still stronger than they would be if both COs were just +0/+0. In this matchup, if you have a tank on a city, your opponent is going to have to spend 3 vehicle hits to remove it. Even with the +20 total bonus of having 1 comm tower and then your +10 from the CO, if you're sending 2 tanks and you're attacking into an opponent's tank on a city, you have a 0% chance to remove that tank. So that's even less than it would be for a 0/0 CO with 1 comm tower. At least in that case, it's a roll. But with Von Bolt in a mirror, it's not a roll. There is no chance that it can succeed. And the same thing goes for infantry. If you have an infantry on a city and you're only being attacked by other infantry, then it's going to always take 3 infantry attacks to remove an infantry off a city. So what this means is that positional play and having well-planned attacks, controlling important tiles is going to be even more important than it would be in another mirror matchup where everybody's got the same bonuses. This also means that this matchup can be very defensive, because if you already control your cities and you just kind of stay on them and let your opponent attack, oftentimes it's going to favor you because they're going to end up having to put a lot of units next to the cities. And even if they manage to remove your stuff, you might be able to kind of counterattack. And then there's a lot of very vulnerable units next to the city that you can basically set up some very efficient trades. So that's the dynamic of the matchup. And this map, additionally, is pretty defensive favored just by the way it's laid out. So oftentimes in fog maps, you'll see the diagonal maps where the bases are kind of in one corner and one corner, and then the fighting happens along a diagonal in the middle. But that's not the case with Redemption World, because we have bases at the top and the bottom. And a lot of the fighting is going to happen along this center line here. I'm not going to break down all the cities, but let's talk about some important things in the map that you need to understand if you're going to be playing here. So really the 2 true contested cities are these 2 side cities here. The reason that they're the most contested is because the bases are relatively central, and so the reinforced distance to these corners is going to be farther away than any other spot in the map. So these two cities, I would say, are flippable. Then you have this city here and this city here, and these 2 are pretty close to the center of the map. They're only like 1 square to the bottom and to the top of the center line, because this forest here is in the middle. This is the center line of the map. But if you capture this city, it is very hard to ever lose it, because you have this forest here. It's very easy to put artillery here, and then you just you can prevent capture attempts on the city basically forever, as long as you've got an artillery in here. So as long as you get it, it's probably yours. Now there's some risk where if you don't get it early enough and then your opponent commits a lot of units to try and deny it, then it can get denied for a very long time, and it can become very difficult for you to ever get it. So this is actually a topic that I covered a lot in my first video, where I set up a build that involved getting a very early recon and artillery on the strong side to try and deny captures of this city, and then kind of stabilize the game around that, and just being able to kind of control this area here to give me kind of a permanent income advantage. In that video, actually, let's just switch over to that replay. Okay, so we're back onto Redemption World. So I'm gonna kind of cycle through the first couple of turns here. So in this game, one of the things that I did is I realized that this property was very important to get early, and so I actually sent my second infantry from this base up to this property immediately to basically capture that. And if you do that, then the only way your opponent can get a vehicle to this property in time to interrupt it is with a day 3 recon, which is a very uncommon build on this map for a number of reasons. We'll get into some of the opener theory a little bit later on. So I sent that infantry up there in this game, and then I set up this kind of very aggressive attempt to lock this city. But I saw this tank here, and ultimately the plan to lock this city didn't really work out. And what I learned from this game is that, I mean, attacking on this map is very hard because this base has an incredibly fast reinforce. There's no forests that are really blocking. I mean, I guess you could say like this forest is in the way, right? But there's a lot of different ways for vehicles to get forward from this base without obstruction. And it's also one tile ahead of these bases. And these bases kind of, if they want to go straight up, they got to go through these forests. And if they want to go around, then it's long. So ultimately what this means is that in the early game, it's very common to make tanks from this base, because you get tanks out on the map very quickly, and then they can kind of go wherever they want. Because you can get tanks out so quickly from this base, it kind of diminishes the value of aggro openers on this map. Because if getting early tanks is very strong, and especially getting tanks out onto the map where they can defend your contested properties, like this property is 2 tank moves away from this base, then if you go for any kind of aggro opener, you're really leaning hard into the rock, paper, scissors aspect, and you're kind of hoping that you don't have something bad happen, because it's very easy for you to just run into a lot of tanks like I did in this replay and get any harassing units picked off just like that. It's very easy to happen. So aggro is tough. So not only is aggro tough, but for me specifically on this map, it's tough because I already have an hour and whatever long video talking about this map, and I don't know for sure whether my opponent watched it, but I went into this map assuming that my opponent was going to know everything that I thought about this map before we even played the game. So I kind of had to take that into account when I was thinking about how I wanted to approach things, because this build that I did is, I mean, it's definitely not going to catch my opponent by surprise, or it really ought not to, right? If it catches my opponent by surprise, then that's Sidewinder's mistake for not preparing enough and watching the video. So In this game that I'm about to show you, I'm the player. Let's see, I'm player 1, I think. Yeah. So now I'm playing player 1, and I'm playing against player 2. And the video that I did is having me play against player 2. So essentially, I'm game planning to beat myself, right? Because my opponent could very easily just copy the exact build that I did in my video, and it would be a good build. And so I need to consider the possibility that they just do what I did in that video, and it would be a pretty sound strategy to do that. And they don't have to, but at least when I'm designing my opener, that's something that I've got to make sure that I don't lose to my own build, basically. So we'll get into what I actually prepared in a moment. But I want to point out some other features of the map that I feel like I didn't give quite enough attention to in the other video. And that is these 2 forest tiles here. These 2 forest tiles are very important, and the reason that they're very important is because recons built from these bases here can get into either one of these forest tiles in 2 moves. And you'd think that they couldn't, because these forest tiles are quite far forward, but with the way that the roads work, you can actually get all the way over here and into those forests. So this is something that I realized pretty early on, and it's something that I wanted to take advantage of on my strong side to get a lot of that vision, and it's something that I wanted to play around on my weak side to try not to move units into range of those forests where a recon in there would be able to see valuable information. So that's a really key feature of this map. And if you're building your recons from your back base here, then you actually are not able to get into those forests. So oftentimes, if you're going to be having a deploy turn where you're building like a tank and then a recon, maybe you would traditionally build the recon from this back base because you can get it all the way up here, relatively quickly with the road. But actually, there's a case to be made for building the tank from here and building the recon from here, because your tank can go to this square, and if it's built from the other base, then it's getting obstructed by these forests here, potentially, if it's going to go in this direction. So, and then also having it on this square here, you kind of have the option value. You can send it this way, or you can send it around this way, and you don't have to really commit to which direction you're going for. So that's just a little tidbit that you can think about if you're ever building like a tank and a recon on your strong side in the same turn. I definitely consider building the tank from the back base, from this further away base, and the recon from the front base, because of being able to get into these forests, which is a really good place for having recons, and then the tank positioning is quite nice as well. So there you have it. I think that's the majority of what I wanted to cover about the map. Let us start looking at this game. All right, so we're in the game here, and I'm going to talk you through my opener in a lot of detail. This opener is not especially revolutionary, but there's a lot of subtlety to it that I think is pretty good, and it might be interesting for you to kind of follow along with me. So we'll kind of talk about it as we go through each of the turns. But to start, nothing crazy, and we're just going to be sending back our guy here. Let's see. I'm going to zoom this out so that I don't constantly pop the menu up there. So, yeah, so you start here because this guy can chain over to here. So that's a good way to start things. So now the question is, what do I do with this second infantry? Because if you remember from the other game, I sent my second infantry all the way straight to this city here. And this is one of the nice things actually about being player 1 on this map. And I think having played both player 1 and player 2 on this map, I like the position of player 1 a little bit more, because I'm ahead on this side. And so this means that actually I can wait one extra turn before sending an infantry to this center city here. And then I will still be arriving here and capturing the city in time to only be interruptible by a day 3 recon. And I don't have to delay this airport. Now, if player 2 wants to be safe, they have to send the second infantry, but I can actually send, as player 1, the third infantry. And so it makes getting this city even more economical and still not very risky. So I'm still willing to take the risk of a day 3 recon showing up and wrecking my world. And I'm just going to play around that and just assume that a day 3 recon is not going to be coming, because it's not really a great build on this map. So it's one of those situations where having a day 3 recon show up would be pretty bad for what I end up doing. We're going to be building a lot of infantry, doing really standard cap stuff, and we're going to be going into a day 5 tank. Just not from the base you expect. So this is where the fun begins. Normally, when you go day 5 tank, you go day 5 tank from here. The reason you go day 5 tank from here is because if this infantry gets harassed, then the tank is in position to counter that and just punish any sort of harassment. However, I don't really think that day 3 recon is a good build on this map, and I'm not expecting my opponent to do it. And if I don't expect my opponent to do it, then there's no real reason to need to punish it if it's not something I think is going to happen. So I'm going to be playing a little bit more greedy, and I'm going to be building my tank on the strong side. Now, I'm not building this tank on the strong side because I'm expecting harass. I'm building the tank on the strong side because I want to build a tank, but I don't want to build it on the weak side. Now, why not on the weak side? It's because of the dynamics of what often happens on the weak side in this map. And what I saw in some other replays is that if fighting happens kind of along here, and it happens for long enough, what ends up happening is that the weak side player reinforcing here, well, they're building a lot of vehicles from this base, which makes sense because you want to have vehicles reinforce the fight very quickly. But because you only have one base here, basically you're constantly pumping out vehicles from this base, which means you're not pumping out infantry. And it ends up leaving your weak side very infantry starved. And eventually, if you get infantry starved enough, then you can't really contest this property anymore, because you end up having less stuff that shoots other stuff. And so that becomes a problem. So what I want to do is I want to do a play where this infantry is going to make a beeline straight for this contested city so that I can get there very, very early. And it's kind of a little bit of a read that my opponent is going to go for a kind of a tank opener from this base, because that's what Starflash did against me in the other game, where Starflash opened 2 tanks from this base. So I'm thinking, okay, that's a very common opener on this map, and I can exploit that by getting to this contested property very early. And if I can get this property very early, by the time I get this property, I want all my vehicles to basically be converging here so that I'm ready to defend it. But I have enough time before that happens where I can build the tank from this base and actually just loop it all the way over here, and it'll still get there in time, even though it's driving a long way. And by building it here, this gives me 1 extra infantry here. And this extra infantry is very important because I'm going to be skipping this guy past this city. And so if I build the tank here, I actually have no infantry that can get to the city for a really long time. So by building the tank on the other side, it frees this infantry up to allow me to simultaneously like get all of my cities here pretty economically, and also make a greedy play to try and steal that city away before my opponent has any vision on the board. So I know that's a long-winded explanation of like a really minute detail, but that is the entire chain of thought behind that little detail. And it does really matter because we're going to be sending infantry from this base. At least we're sending the infantry kind of down here through the center to have the option to be able to send it over here in case we end up in that situation where we're just having like a big brawl over on this side. We want to prepare for that from the very beginning. And if that happens, then we need to have a constant stream of infantry reinforcing in that direction. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to fight for as long as we need to be able to. So day 5 comes and goes without anything exciting. And so now we're just going to be playing the capture game here for a little bit longer. And so we're going to get ready to send our tank over to this area here. Oh yeah, and I skipped by this city as well. So this guy is going to get here, and this guy is going to get here, and then this guy goes here and then to here. So it's like, it's not perfect efficiency, but we're basically trying to set up a situation where we're never going to get locked out of our contested properties. And if we achieve half map, then we can kind of play at our leisure. And we're minimizing the risk that basically we get locked out of important properties. So another tank here. So this is, if you're following the kind of the safe greed aggro triangle, this is somewhere between a safe build and a greed build. This is definitely not an aggro build. There is nothing aggro about this at all. But it's greedy because we have some accelerated captures, and it's safe because we are just opening tanks. So again, we see nothing, which is good. So now we continue our captures. So yeah, you can see why having this extra infantry here is really important, because I can't get these captures and also accelerate these captures without having this extra infantry here. So having the extra infantry is actually really critically important to the capture layout that I've drawn up here. And so now we're shifting this tank over. And so now we'll have everything ready basically by the time this capture goes down. So we're trying to centralize this. So these guys are both, well, this guy is in range to counterattack anything that hits the city. And if if this guy gets cleared off, it's going to take 2 hits. If it takes 2 hits, something probably is going to end up here. So this tank is also in position. Not that I think that anything is necessarily going to come, but that's, yeah. It's also like the full movement, so I don't know. I wouldn't overthink that too much. But anyway, we see a whole lot of nothing. So day 8 rolls around. So now it's just time to go for it. So we move our recons. Finish our captures. And then we just YOLO him down, because this recon's not going to be able to see anything anyway. So we just go for it, and we don't see anything, so that's exciting. And we're setting up to get the last of the cities on our side. So now that we've kind of got stuff capturing through here, these 2 are the last 2 that we would need for half map. So I'm thinking, okay, we haven't seen anything over here. It is possible that we could experience some aggression on this city, at least temporarily. That is something that can happen. And especially if my opponent takes this woods here. It's a very strong position because it's pretty tough to clear stuff out of this woods, especially if it's like a recon, because you need to basically expose something on like this tile here, or you need to be able to get a vehicle onto this city. But this city is it's actually 3 tank moves from both of these bases, so that can be tricky in the early game. Let me get the recon down here, and we want to see if anything is coming here. Okay, now's where things get a little bit complicated. So we're gonna be sending this infantry over here, and this is mostly just to check this forest. I'm not really sure. I didn't really know what to do with this infantry. I need to move him somewhere, because really what I want to do is I want to move this tank onto the city here. Moving the tank onto the city, it does kind of give away that I have an early tank, but by this point, the secrecy is not actually that important. So having it on the city basically prevents me from needing to defend this city, because my tank on my city is basically invulnerable, as we talked about in the CO matchup breakdown earlier. And also it allows me to cover this guy. And now we see an infantry. Now I want you to put on your big brain hats with me, because you may think this infantry means nothing. And I'm here to tell you, this infantry being here actually provides a substantial amount of information to me. And if you don't believe me, well, strap in. I'm gonna hopefully, I don't know if I'll blow your minds necessarily, but I think we can conclude more than you think we can by the position of this infantry. So first of all, the infantry, 90 fuel. So that means it starts at 99 and it moves from here. It's 1, 2, 3, right? So it's not hard to understand how this infantry got there. That means that this infantry was almost certainly built from this base. And so now we need to go back in time and think about what turn or what day was this infantry built from this base. So it's my day 8, which means that it arrived here on day 7, which means it arrived here on day 6, which means it arrived here on day 5, which means it was built on day 4. Okay, well, so what? Well, most aggro builds on this map, or any build that involves like early vision or anything like that, generally is going to involve like a day 4 recon. And generally, if you're going to go day 4 recon, you're going from this base. So the fact that this infantry exists strongly suggests that whatever my opponent did not involve a day 4 recon from this base. And if there's not a day 4 recon from this base, then it's relatively unlikely that there are any recons in here. And what we're assuming, because this map kind of lends itself to day 5 tank, is that we see this, okay, infantry probably from this base on day 4. This is probably a day 5 tank build from the weak side, which is very similar to what I did. I built it from the strong side, but the unit deployment is the same. So it's not the only possibility, but everything that we've learned so far, the lack of any harassment and this infantry being here, strongly suggests what we're playing against. If in fact this is a day 5 tank build from this side, then it's very likely that this capture is going to go through and we're not going to get harassed, because there's going to be no vision of this this infantry this early. So because of that, I'm going to cheat away and think about defending this capture, because I'm starting to think that it's pretty unlikely that we'll get harassed on this side based on what we're seeing. Now I sent him over here to, and this is, I'm trying to have my cake and eat it too. If you look at the position here, so this guy's kind of covering here, and this guy's the possibility of covering here in case a recon gets frisky and shows up on this city here. That'd be kind of crazy, but we can at least protect against that. And also I'm thinking about, okay, maybe if he hasn't captured this, oh, you know, that's what this, right now I remember, because this infantry is going to go and look here, I think, next turn to see if he captured this, I think. I don't know. I can't remember exactly. Anyways, I was thinking about, like, okay, what if we put some pressure on here? At least have the ability to, but I was feeling pretty confident that this was going to go through. Yeah. And now this is a nice time to go into a copter, because we've got tanks here, we've got recons here, so we've got some power, vision. Now we kind of want to boost unit count a little bit, and also building this copter allows me to sneak in another infantry on the weak side. So in the event that we do end up fighting over here, having infantry numbers is going to be very very beneficial for me. But we haven't really committed to the left side either. These tanks are very centralized, so we do have the ability to shift back the other way if we end up getting harassed over there. Okay, infantry disappears, and now we see another 90 fuel infantry show up. Well, I will leave the exercise to you, the viewer. We talked about the existence of the infantry here last turn. What do you think the importance of this infantry showing up this turn is? What does this tell me about what our opponent is doing? It's the exact same logic, it's just one day later. This infantry being here strongly suggests that our opponent built an infantry from this base on day 5. Well, if an infantry was built from this base on day 5, then it's most likely that any vehicles that were built were probably built on this side. That is the logical conclusion that we should draw from what we've seen so far. So it's actually kind of remarkable, like, how much you can conclude from a little bit of information like that. And we're getting away with our greedy capture here, so this is very good. So now we just need to lock down like these last 2 properties here, and we've successfully captured half the map. We get a recon in here. We see that this is already captured. And not only is it already captured, but the infantry has already left. So clearly our opponent did something similar to my video when I was playing the other side, where I went for this city early, which is a smart thing to do. So no arguments there. We're not really in a position to try and exploit that, but we'll at least move the infantry forward somewhat. And then we put the recon here on the city, and we see a tank here. And so that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if the city is here on day 8, then it was here on day 7, is here on day 6. So we kind of have an idea, right, of what's been built so far. We know that the day 4 we had an infantry here, day 5 we had an infantry here, and day 6 there was a tank here from this base. So to me, that suggests that probably day 5 tank here, day 6 tank here. Could be recons as well on the weak side, but I wouldn't expect that based on just how this map is good for tanks on the weak side. So we move this copter here so that it stays out of recon range if a recon enters the forest. Now we have every reason to believe that there is not a recon here currently, but because a recon can go from this base to this tile in 2 moves, a day 7 recon from this base could enter into here next turn, for all we know. And if that's the case, I don't want to give away information about this copter for free. So that's why we're going to put it in that specific spot. And so now, in my mind, this tank is a defensive tank. It's covering this capture. Because we think like there's a tank on the other side of the board somewhere. So this tank is just kind of there to make sure my opponent locks down half map. So I'm also going to focus on locking down half map, and I'm going to shift these tanks over to this side, and we're going to think about making sure that we can like try to contest this this city down here, and also make sure that any attacks on this city can get dealt with. So that's the rationale here. Because if for some reason this tank comes in here, then we still have the copter that can kind of defend against that. So it's not the end of the world. But I wouldn't expect anything like that, given what we think we know about where my opponent's been building units. And we're going to go for an artillery up here. You really want an artillery. Otherwise, you just have no way to remove enemy tanks from cities when you're playing against Fun Bowl. So it's very important to incorporate an artillery at some point. This is not an especially early artillery. This is an appropriately timed artillery. And anti-air as well, because we're thinking we might be fighting down here in this corner. If we're going to fight in this corner, then we're fighting into the airport, so we need to have an anti-air for sure on the strong side. And we'll get a recon here. Recons are good for infantry fighting, and we want to probably put the recon like here. The infantry comes in here to scout that. Recon shows up here. That kind of tells me that this recon was built from this base. And then this tank just shows up, and he's got an infantry in these woods. And he just freaking kills my dude. Now, I'm going to tell you, I was pretty mad. Because I did not think he was just going to send in that tank. Now, I don't really think that I was wrong to expect this attack to not happen. There's a couple reasons why. One, this tank is now within 2 tank moves of both this base and this airport. Additionally, I have not shown anything on the map in terms of units. So my opponent should probably think that I have a lot of tanks on my weak side, similar to how I think my opponent has at least 1 tank on the weak side. And because my opponent has 1 tank on the weak side, attacking over here with the tank is kind of nuts because the forces are not concentrated unless there's another tank kind of hiding back here somewhere, or the tank kind of shifted over here and is like hiding in this forest somehow. But there's a decent chance I would have seen it if that was the case. So regardless, this is still okay because my opponent does not have a way to get infantry onto this city. So as long as I can keep putting stuff onto this city, eventually, if we keep fighting here, it's going to be 3 tank moves away from my opponent's bases, and it's going to be 2 tank/copter moves away from my bases. And over time, as long as we keep fighting here, this should favor me. Now I gotta be careful though, because it's the weak side, and so trading infantry can be a little bit dangerous. I've got to start making sure that I've got a lot of infantry that can basically shift over here so that I have the fuel to kind of continue the fighting. So there's a lot of stuff that's going on here. But anyway, let's do the automatic stuff. So first of all, I see whether my opponent has taken this city. He's not, so that's good. So now we've got the means to kind of lock this city down and just defend this city, and we're going to be ahead on income. So at least that aspect of it is good. So I go ahead and I move the recon in on here, and so this recon being here is quite nice because removing this recon is going to require 2 tanks. Or actually, I think tank and a recon can fight it, and it's a roll. Anyway. And then we are forced to commit the copter here. Now, it is day 10, and this is 3 tank moves away. So we know a lot about the deployments, right? I mean, this was day 4, day 5 infantry, day 6 tank, and then day 7 we don't know, and we think that day 7, so this was like a day 7 recon here. So as long as it's not day 7 recon, day 7 anti-air from here, this still should be pretty safe. But we can't really control that. We kind of are obligated to commit the copter here, even if our opponent has an anti-air. We'll just have to live with it. And the way we live with it is we shift our tanks over. So now it's a little bit unfortunate. We committed a lot of reinforcements to the wrong front, but now it looks like the fight might be happening over here instead. So this is not ideal, but at least we need to shift everything back over. It does stink though, because we're out of position. And we just were not expecting our opponent to do that attack. But if this anti-air gets, or if anti-air shows up and picks up this copter, at least we do have this tank in position that can potentially fight into the anti-air and get a hit on it. And if we're fighting here over multiple turns, we do have a reinforcement advantage. So this should be good for us in the long run, as long as we continue the fight, continue the pressure, continue the fight. As we shift this guy over, and it's just unfortunate. But can you imagine, like, imagine the previous turn, instead of shifting these tanks over here, I shifted them like here to defend this. This play would have been like an absolute disaster for my opponent, because I could put like recon, copter, tank, and then what do you do? Yeah. So I kind of skipped past some further moves here, but now that we expect to get attacked here, we see all this infantry. Like, you can see that our opponent wants to get this city, so we just need to defend this city. It's pretty simple. So we want to throw all of our funds into reinforces on this side. And now all of our infantry that have been coming to the center from this base, now these guys are all going to start shifting over here, so that we have enough infantry to contest this, or at least to defend this long enough. Yeah. So let's see what goes on here. 3 HP infantry goes to the forest. Tank goes back to the city. And we do get an anti-air that shows up. So that's unfortunate. But this recon actually goes really aggressive. And it's going to see the other tank here. And we see a tank show up here. So this, based on what we know, like, this could be like the day 5 tank that kind of is now shifting over. So it does, we kind of know what the situation is, right? The situation is everything's here for probably both of us. And there's just going to be a big fight. Furthermore, these guys retreating, that tells us a tremendous amount as well. So our opponent clearly thinks that fighting here with what he's got over here is not great. It almost feels too good to be true that all these guys are retreating, because he's just giving me this city for free, basically. So, I mean, I almost wonder if it's like a trap. You know, like, I send an infantry to the city and then he shows up with like a recon and tries to delay that. But if he's going to give it to me, then I'll take it, because that's going to give me a 2k income advantage leading into the mid game, and this matchup really favors defensive play. So even though it's unfortunate that we lost the copter there, the strategic dynamics of the match so far are looking pretty good for me, especially if we can continue this fight here. Being in 2-turn reinforced from these two properties is going to ultimately lead to almost like an extra 15k of units for me every turn that are joining the fight. So even if, like, okay, like I did, 4.5k to a tank, then I lost 9k of a copter, but ultimately if I'm fighting up like plus 15k of reinforces in this area, then it's still going to be favorable to me, even if right now I'm behind a little bit in the trading. So he's walled off the anti-air pretty nicely, but I did prepare pretty decently for this. I've got a lot of units that can hit infantry. So I am pretty well prepared to take an engagement here. Tank on the city is kind of annoying though. But anyway, let's see the carnage here. So I see that that other tank that I saw is in the forest, which is what we expected anyway, because we saw it drive past our vision. We're actually going to remove the tank from the city. Now, this may feel a little bit counterintuitive because you remove the tank from the city, but then you're just giving this tank up to a counterattack from a tank on the city. Like, why is that good? Well, first of all, I removed the tank, so there's no counterattack damage. So it's basically like half a tank for free. Any tank that attacks this tank is going to take some counterattack damage. So it's kind of like I did half a tank, and then any further trade here is going to kind of equalize it. So additionally, this square here, we're still fighting 3 3 tank moves away from these 2 bases. And the line is here. So it's here, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, so this little line here, that's the line between where you can get into two moves. So as long as we stay out of 2-turn reinforce, it's going to be pretty good for us. And we see this tank here. So that was the tank that was built here 2 turns ago. It's pretty hard for there to be more tanks arriving next turn to the fight than just these 2. We do get a hit off on the anti-air. So even though the anti-air did kill a copter, we did get to a pretty efficient trade into it. And just damaging this anti-air is important because we're going to be spamming copters here, because just based on where the fight is. So he's going to have to keep building anti-air if he wants to continue this fight. Otherwise, the copter numbers are just going to overwhelm him, and then he won't be able to fight anymore. We don't need to care about our opponent seeing the tank. We can't do anything about this recon on a city. It's obnoxious that it sees everything, but this is no longer a fight about vision and deception. All the cards are on the table. Everybody can see everything. I know what's going on. He knows what's going on. We're just fighting, but we're fighting in a position on the map where it's better for me. And then I can also put this recon here, take a pretty decent chunk out of this infantry, and this is still 3 turns away for tanks. So attacking here, it seems like the artillery, or it seems like the recon is really exposed, but the reality is, what's going to kill this recon? I mean, I guess this tank could potentially, but this tank really wants to fight. Like, his tanks are going to want to fight my tanks, but he just doesn't have enough stuff. Like, there's a number of stuff problem, and now this infantry fight, the numbers are looking pretty good for me as well. Now, seems like we're in pretty good shape over here. We're going to think about maybe putting some pressure on this base, or on this city. We'll see. But for right now, I just want to get a decent amount of vision here, because we pretty much accomplished all that we can on this side. Pushing into these properties is very challenging. We are, however, going to leave an anti-air over here. There is potential for like split push on this side, especially like if you send like a copter up here. I want to have an anti-air just kind of chilling as a defensive unit. And if there's recons that show up as well, The anti-air is good against the Recons as well, so it's not my first choice of a defensive unit, but it's not really going to do any good over here, so we should just leave it here. And then we hide the copter out of vision. We don't want to give our opponent any knowledge that this copter exists, even though it's pretty likely to exist. And it can still stay in range and cover this tank and stay out of vision. So we see infantry in the center, and that's fine. I'm kind of hoping that he will see this infantry and be like, oh, wow, this city is very vulnerable. I should attack this infantry and then capture this, and then it'll be in artillery range. Kind of unlikely to actually work because that'd be a pretty gross overextension, but I want to rotate this artillery over here anyway because that's where the fighting's happening, so might as well set a little trap while we're rotating. And again, we're just spending all of our money over here, and we're going to leave 3K because now we're setting up for a Neo-Tank buy next turn. And this base is really good for Neo-Tanks if you can get the money. And we're going to have the money. Kind of a weird setup here. Doesn't kill the infantry, just damages it. Okay, so we see another tank show up, hits the infantry, which is fine. And so this is that second turn reinforce, right? Like, it's kind of frustrating for my opponent because you can get all the way to here, but this is one square short of actually hitting anything. So I hope now that you can see why the trade I took on the city was actually good for me. I took out 5 HP on a tank, and then the subsequent attack, I lost 5 HP on the tank, but it also counterattacked for 2 damage. So not only did I remove a unit, so the unit count was in my to my advantage, but the total damage done to units was in my favor as well. So this is exactly what I was hoping for, and now my opponent really wants to get this city, but now there's a big problem. There's not enough infantry left over to actually create a credible threat to this city anymore. We kind of won the infantry fight well enough, and now we've got, like, look at all these guys. These guys are floating over here, so we're going to be able to sustain enough infantry arriving to this front to be able to deflect any attempts to get the city. And if things kind of stall out from here, that's still fine, because I'm going to have both of these cities now. So things are going to stall out, and I'm going to have a 2K income lead after all is said and done. And now we can fight in the center. It's a nice positioning for a recon. And this is all to set up. We want our opponent to go into these woods here. We'll get to that in a second, I guess. So clearing off some infantry. We can finally take out this this recon now that we trapped last turn. We get a roll here. That was kind of nice. So that recon's gone, and we're pretty far back. And yeah, recon on the city. So now there's never any threat to this city anymore, because we know that there's no infantry in range. This is the closest full health infantry. It's 2 turns away. So like, we're never going to be losing this city anytime soon. Put stuff on cities. And now we just disengage. This is a really nice disengagement. We've got a wall that's blocking access to this tank. So like my opponent can continue the fight, but if he continues the fight, he's going to have to extend pretty deep into my territory, and this turn is the Neotank buy. So now there is a time limit on the value of these tanks. I'm just going to set up defensively here in case copters show up over the city. Now's the Neotank. So now we just need to kind of survive like 2 more turns, and the Neotank is going to end this fight. So now I think my opponent realizes capturing the city is not going to happen. Well, let's take a peek at the other side and try. Maybe that side is vulnerable. So that's nice. We get some artillery value here. And we're winning this infantry fight really hard. So this is set up pretty nice. The challenge here is we could go in with like everything here. But it's a little awkward for us because we know that there's like an anti-air here that's repairing. If there's another anti-air, we don't really want to like lose both of these copters. In terms of like the trading, it's still pretty even. I mean, I've killed 1 more unit than my opponent. I've taken a little bit more damage, but I do have the income lead, right? I'm at 23k income. My opponent's at 21k. So it's okay to be taking a little bit more damage because that's gonna work itself out in my favor. But really, we just need to continue winning the infantry fight, especially now in this middle. There's like a big infantry fight, and we're really well set up to win that pretty decisively. Just thinning out the numbers here. And this is kind of a devious move here. We can clear off the infantry here. This anti-air is actually really safe being on a city. It's pretty unlikely that our opponent has 2 tanks ready to hit this anti-air, given that everything's been reinforcing on the strong side. And if there's anything that's going to show up to support this attack, it's going to be a copter. It's not going to be a tank. Well, any copter attacking into this is not going to get very far. So now there's not really much risk of me losing the city unless I'm really wrong about the tank showing up. So this is why it was good to keep this anti-air as a defense on this side. It's really paying off. And even though I lost an infantry here, I was able to get 1 in return. And then we also just damaged this guy. That's mostly because we don't want there to be a threat to this city. If for some reason I'm wrong about the tanks being available over here, having a full HP infantry available to cap the city would actually put some decent pressure on me. So by trading into this guy, we basically eliminate the possibility that we'll ever have to defend this city for a couple of turns. So go in here as well. So I hadn't bothered to capture this city for a while because it seemed like my opponent was just like abandoning this property by not putting an infantry on there. It seemed like he really wanted me to try and capture it. And now based on seeing this infantry here, I'm like, there's probably an artillery here. But the thinking behind going for this city is that in the world where there's like actual tanks here to be able to kill my anti-air, having this infantry here could potentially divert a tank from fighting over here and instead force a fight, or at least force the tank to try and clear this infantry. I don't really know if that was sound or not, but that was the thinking. We don't want to use the recon on this infantry because that would be extending into 2-turn reinforce from these bases. And we're actually just going to be content to clean up infantry here. And we're not going to actually fight into these tanks. We're just going to ignore them because there's a few reasons. So one, our best offense is a little bit paper thin. It's a little awkward for us to try and fight into this positioning here. Fighting next turn is going to be really good. Fighting this turn, not as good. Better to wait. And the last reason is we're sowing the seeds of deception about where we're actually strong. We've managed to, I believe we managed to hide both of these copters from being seen by any recons. So as far as our opponent is concerned, we have a lot of army value on the map that has not been spotted. For all our opponent knows, that army value could be over here. And the fact that we so aggressively committed our anti-air to this defense could potentially send alarm bells that, hey, there's actually a lot of stuff here. So maybe this stuff is vulnerable. And I would love for my opponent to think this stuff is vulnerable, because if these tanks attack into this stuff, well, Neo tank. He hungry. Hungry boy. So now we're just setting up for a counterattack. Sure, my opponent controls this good terrain here, but there's no infantry left to threaten the city. So who cares? We're a little bit heavy on copters right now, which is not great, but hoping that the Neo tank can carry the day. We have every reason to believe that our opponent has no Neo tank because we know that they've been repairing an anti-air over here, which we can apparently see it through the fog of war, which is kind of amusing. At least in the replay viewer we can. And then we knew that there was a tank here that repaired. So there've been like a lot of repairs going on that have been eating away at the income for our opponent. And also, we're at 23K, but our opponent's at 21K. It's pretty hard to afford a 22K unit without base skipping when you're on 21K income. So we have every reason to believe that we've got the first tech out and that we probably have a decent window of time where this Neo tank is just going to be totally untouchable. And there's the artillery, so, well, he got me. But this infantry is retreating. See another tank show up. This is a 2-turn reinforced tank, but it was kind of a crappy infantry, and it killed. That infantry was there to reveal the forest. So, and yeah, he's going in. See an anti-air go into the woods here, so that makes you feel pretty good. That was a full health anti-air. And we know that that's a second anti-air. There was a weakened one that was also repairing. So if we had gone in with our 2 copters, we probably would have lost both copters. And now that recon, incredible job. Absorbed 2 tank hits. Really good stuff, recon. All right, and now the trap is sprung. This is like the dream turn because everything is set up so beautifully. Like there's just a million options of what to do this turn. There's just one problem. We have the ability to do so much damage this turn that we have to start thinking about the superpowers. Think about it. What are the vulnerable units here? We've got like 3 tanks, and then if we're lucky, there's an anti-air in the woods that we could potentially go for as well. If for some, just a back of the envelope math, right? Like if we're able to get all of them, then that's 7 plus 7 plus 7 for 21, and the anti-air is 29. So we'd be giving away 29k of charge, and 29k of charge would bring my opponent to 80k out of 90k, which means my opponent's getting superpower next turn. That's what that means. And so I planned out a couple of different scenarios for how I could do this turn. Oh, also, this tank is in 1 turn reinforce of the airport. So that's really nice to have the option to activate that copter. I was going through my my old move planner screenshots for this turn. It's not something I do very often, but this turn was kind of technical. And I realized that I didn't make as many screenshots as I thought I did. So I apologize. I'm actually not going to show any of those off because they're not that interesting. But anyway, to make a long story short here, if I go in with absolutely everything here, I can kill a whole ton of stuff. A lot of stuff. But what happens is that it all ends up in like this giant clump. And there's like no way to avoid like an insanely juicy Ex Machina. So the conclusion that I made was I actually need to limit the amount of stuff that I kill this turn because I need to make sure I don't get Ex Machina this turn or the Ex Machina next turn. So I actually can't kill as much stuff as I want to. So instead, we're just going to be really efficient. And so we see the rest of what we've got here. Neo Tank is hungry. Remove 3 tanks. And then also we now have a wall. So this copter is not exposed anymore. That's 3 tanks. So we were a little bit behind in damage dealt, but now we're up in units and we're up 12k in unit damage, which is pretty substantial. It's like almost 2 tanks. And we've been spamming copters as well. So our unit count should be pretty healthy. And we've got the income lead too. So this is the turn where I was like, okay, we're in very strong control of this game. And now we can chill. The anti-air, this city is not being threatened anymore because we know he retreated the infantry. Yeah, so a lot of copters. Well, let's see what the reaction is to this Neo Tank. Retreat, 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 retreat. Well, that tells you about all you need to know. So if we were wondering whether our opponent had a Neo Tank or not, or an answer to the Neo Tank, I think the answer is pretty clear. Now, unfortunately, can't really chase. If we try to go too deep, it's going to end badly. What you really don't want to do is you don't want to overextend into getting Ex Machina. That would be really bad. So instead, the game plan is we need to make peace with the fact that we are up 2K in income. The longer things stay the way they are right now, the better it's going to be for us. And we play positionally, and we need to set up a good magnet so that we can receive the Ex Machina. And magneting is always a challenge, but we're going to get some good vision here. We see an APC. That's actually a really happy thing to see, because we're already going to have more income than our opponent. And now our opponent has spent 5K of income on a unit that doesn't shoot stuff, because we won the infantry fight decisively enough that became necessary to buy. So that's a pretty happy feeling. And now we're just going to set up our magnet back here. And now we want to kind of spread things out a little bit. And now we're going to have this artillery here to lock down this forest. We got a lot of weak infantry, so we're thinking, if we heal a bunch of weak infantry, then that will expand our unit count advantage as well. And it's a very important turn. So this APC tells us something interesting. We see an APC, and we see an infantry that was just moved here by the APC. If our opponent has built infantry, like it looks like 2 turns ago, our opponent built infantry in one of these 2 bases, right? Because otherwise, like how could this infantry be here? So opponent was building infantry and an APC from here, which are not vehicles that shoot stuff, which means where's the money being spent by our opponent? It leaves a lot of income unaccounted for. And there's really only 2 possible answers to that question. One answer would be there's tech. So our opponent got either like a medium tank or saved up for a neo tank as well. Or there's a lot of copters being spammed here. There's a lot of copters being spammed here. Then we need to have a lot of anti-air. And especially, we're thinking that maybe we're going to start shifting the push to here. And if we're going to push into the airport side, then we need to have a lot of anti-air ready. So that is the reason for the double anti-air. So our 1 HP guy gets picked off, but he draws an infantry into artillery range. And he is kind of committing to defend this city, which is probably smart because I've got a lot of infantry here. So if he doesn't commit to this defense, then I'm going to take over this really strong terrain here. It's going to be very difficult to dislodge me. It is very difficult to push on this map. Like, I got these 2 cities, but where's the next city going to come from? Where's the next objective? It's pretty hard to find one that's easy to take. You're looking at one of these 2 cities, but it's actually acquiring them is not trivial, even with a big advantage. And we've definitely got a big advantage. This tank being here screams bait. So I see this tank here. I'm just like, oh, there's an artillery here, 100%. I don't know if there's actually an artillery there, but this is what it tells me. It's like, you really want the Neo tank to come here and hit this tank because there's an artillery covering it. That was my conclusion. Yeah. So we get the recon down here. We see nothing. We see the recon over here. So we're playing the game of where's the stuff? We're thinking maybe the stuff is over here. Well, we got vision now. Stuff's not over there. See stuff over here. Probably stuff is over here. Go in, send our crap infantry into into the forest. And yeah, it does look like everything is kind of over in this area here. So we're gonna commit to the most half-hearted push ever. I'm basically just committing infantry and nothing else of value. We're gonna leave the Neo tank back here. Because we're fighting into artillery range, so it's not the worst. And now we're starting to think about, okay, this, I mean, we're capturing this city, but we know this is not going to work. This is purely positional play. And really we're thinking about, okay, can we like front shift over here and try to catch this city by surprise? That's the thinking. The magnet is here, by the way. That's the magnet. So maybe I should explain the concept. So if you're not familiar with playing against Von Bolt, Von Bolt's superpower has a like a diamond, I guess, a 2x2 diamond that it will lock down the area on the map that you have the most value in units. And you want to have as few and as little value units as possible to kind of absorb that attack, which generally means you need to kind of spread out. And so I've set up this positioning in a way that if somehow my opponent gets the Ex Machina next turn, it's going to hit these units and then the copter, but these two units are already in cities, so they'll be locked down, but they'll just end up repairing the damage for free, so it's pretty efficient. Like if you're going to eat the power, then that's like the least painful way to do it. And it also will stay away from all the rest of these units that presumably we would want to be fighting. And we get a lot of tanks. The reason we're going very heavily into tanks here, and we could have actually gotten another Neo tank, but we ended up not doing that. And honestly, I might have been better off considering another Neo tank because that would have made some of the magneting easier in the future. But I see the amount of copters I have, which is 4. And I see the amount of tanks that I have in the fight, which is also 4. I guess 5 if you include that. And it's like, I'm still a little bit thin. I'd really just like to have more tanks in the composition. I don't know. It's one of those situations where I'm pretty sure that as long as I don't do anything really dumb, it's going to be impossible to lose. You just have to avoid like any really major mistakes, like throwing away the Neo tank for nothing, things like that. So we end up getting popped here. Not too surprising. And he's actually going to commit a lot of units here. And we see the artillery show up here, which is kind of cool. So that's nice. And if we look at the fuel, so it's really low on fuel. This actually tells us that that was almost certainly the artillery that was over here previously. So it looks like he front shifted everything over here. So that gives us a good idea of, where's the stuff. And we can be pretty confident we're not going to be facing any attacks over here anytime soon, because all the stuff's over on the other side. I see an anti-air shift over to the right here. The tank's kind of heading over in this area. Recon is like super far back. Okay. I wasn't expecting to have the opportunity to get the first superpower this game, given that even now I'm still like 5k ahead in total damage dealt. And it's very easy to do the math, right? You just look at the charge bars. The difference between our charge is 2,500, so you double that, and that's the difference between the damage done. At least until the first round of superpowers go off, and then you can't rely on that anymore. But the downside is that if I go in here, I'm going to be really clumped up in this area. And so his superpower is going to go off, and the magneting is going to be really tricky. But it's just too good to pass up. Yeah, and we have so much vision, and seeing nothing, like everything has to be here. There's nowhere else for it to be. So we can actually break this, and we'll end up hitting the artillery. It's a little bit overextendy, but we end up getting these really critical defensive properties, or defensive tiles. And with the superpower, we're getting an extra 10% defense here. So we were already difficult to get off of cities and things like that, but now it's even worse. The challenge here, this is a lot of valuable clumped up stuff. It'd be really bad if that valuable clumped up stuff took an ex machina while it was relatively overextended. So we have to create a really non-ideal magnet over here. Now, last turn, I set up an ideal magnet where the Neotank was on the city and the anti-air was on the city, and then you get repaired. It was great. Now, I have to build a Neotank over here. And so now the magnet is over here, and that's really not ideal because now this base is going to get locked down, and that's going to be -1 unit count for me. But my hope is that the fact that we got an ex machina, our ex machina went over down here. I'm basically thinking like, it doesn't matter if this stuff gets locked down if the game ends next turn. That's like, by the time this stuff makes it to the fight, I'm hoping that the game will be over already and it just won't matter. So as long as it's not this stuff that's actively fighting that gets locked down, then I probably just win immediately. Because, like, what is there to hit the Neotank? Like, there's nothing. And this stuff, I mean, sure, the copter's like uncontested this turn, but what else is gonna shoot this? Like, this is just never gonna make a difference. But we are definitely noticeably weak on anti-air. That copter, we didn't have an anti-air for it, but we are shifting like these guys over here. Very hopeful artillery positioning, hoping that this would all get locked down. Now, here's a fun note. So I actually screwed this up. This is actually a big mistake. It's actually not the first time that magneting has caused me issues. Turns out that the reason that this gets hit and not this is because this little guy is in the way. And I didn't realize that. But actually, had this copter just moved away before the Ex Machina went off, it would have been all of this that would have gotten locked down. Now, I'm not sure that necessarily would have made a big difference, but it is interesting. But that didn't happen, so it's okay. So the fight continues. I'm kind of surprised that the fight is continuing here, given that this didn't get locked down. But I guess he's just trying to send everything in that he can. We do see some stuff show up here. It's kind of annoying that another tank showed up here, because we were kind of ready. Now we're not quite. Like this copter. Wish it was like one square closer. If it was one square closer, it would have been kind of okay. Now we see the infantry kind of come out hiding a little bit. What? Huh? Uh-oh. So, yeah. Now he's cooked. I do think it's the sequencing. This is pretty funny. So I'm guessing that he thought, this is my only anti-air. If I don't kill this, then this copter is going to get wrecked. Reveal the bomber. Just assume that there's nothing else, and if I win this fight, then I can basically start pushing to this corner. I think it's the idea. Obviously, very, very, very risky. But it does remove the anti-air. And then I do think it is amusing. So the way that he sequenced this, the anti-air is to come in first, and then the recon is the thing that finishes off the anti-air on the city, which then provides the vision that there's another anti-air there. So, yeah. If I mean, things were bad before, but now it's awful in so many ways, because now I'm going to get this anti-air hit on the bomber, and I'm going to get charged for it, and he's not. And now, I mean, what's gonna fight the Neo tank, right? Now you may be thinking, like, why didn't the bomber go into the Neo tank? But if we look at the positioning here, we have to do some counting, which is always scary. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this is exactly 3 moves away from the airport. So if you're wondering why the bomber is here and not killing the Neo tank, it's because the bomber probably could not reach. Okay, so now we get to retreat a little bit, but we do our damage. Neo tank, he's hungry. He's a hungry boy. And we just disengage. And we say, okay, if you would like to continue this fight, then you're going to have to come beyond the 2 tank reinforced line from these bases. And I'm actually just going to shift everything over. We don't really need to worry so much about defending this property because we see all the infantry, and I guess there could be an infantry in here. So that is a little bit of a mistake. I think I didn't account for the fact that it would be possible to put pressure on here. But I don't know if there's actually an infantry in here. So I'm just going to retreat here, and we're just going to try and centralize a little bit. But if we look at the stats, like we've done 20k more damage. So even though we took like a really brutal ex machina up here, getting the bomber, that's really pretty devastating. Very what was that slipped through? It's an anti-air, so we've seen anti-air slip through here. But it seems like, okay, we were a little bit worried about a push on this city, but it doesn't look like that push is going to come. If it was going to come, then these tanks would have had to stay over here. Okay. All right, so this is what we would describe in the business as a yeet. So yeah, this is a resign in everything but name, because just kind of overextended everything. And the counterattack here is going to be quite bloody. Enjoy. Yeah, so a lot of dead stuff. Suddenly up 11 kills. So we'll kind of motor through these final turns. Because at this point, the result is not too hard to figure out. So artillery down to 4 ammo. It's a really happy feeling when you're in artillery. He's been doing work. So we can just kind of keep trading because nothing, I mean, what's going to fight the Neotank? Like, it doesn't, none of this matters at all. Every turn the Neotank eats a tank. He's a hungry boy. Oh, and actually we're all the way back up to like superpowers. So I set up a magnet up here. This is actually a pretty decent magnet. And now we've got enough like unit count advantage, we can just start pressuring the cities that even if they're kind of unrealistic, it's just forcing more fights. And when you have this strong on advantage, forcing more fights is quite good. So there's the magnet. One bad magnet earlier. Now one good magnet. So at least I gave you one good example. But yeah, we get to keep fighting here. Neo tank. He's a hungry boy. We get the Ex Machina here, so we know that there was a copter here. We saw it earlier, and then we hit the base as well. So it could be a Neo tank there or something, or just like a second copter maybe in this vicinity. And now finally we've spread out the fight enough that we can finally pressure this city. And we actually can't see the rest of the game because the replay viewer is kind of corrupted. But anyway, to spoil things, this copter dies to an anti-air, but then it's in artillery range. There's nothing to interrupt this cap, and yeah, that's pretty much the end. So this ends up being a resign on this turn, and that's the end of the game. So we are into the finals. I'm really thrilled to finally make it all the way there. This has been a really long tournament. It's almost like we're almost to like a year and a half. Is it a year and a half? I think it's like a year and 2 months at this point. And we might be close to a year and a half by the time it's done, because there's going to be a number of games on the other side of the finals bracket that are yet to resolve as of the current moment. But we're there, so we'll be waiting, and we'll be thinking about what we're going to be doing. But let's take another peek through this game with full vision. Shouldn't take too long to see everything that there is to see. So this is actually really interesting. This infantry is going straight up for the city. I don't like that. I think it's too inefficient, and the only benefit you get from doing this is you're safe from day 3 recon. But if it's not day 3 recon, then you're kind of costing yourself money. So I don't know, not a huge fan. So anyway, so day 5 tank here. So we were right about the build that our opponent was doing. Day 6 tank here. And this is, yeah, so recon, anti-air. And anything else would have worked out really, like it would have worked out way worse even for our opponent had it been something else. I mean, you can see that, you know, we've ended up with a pretty decent income lead just based off efficiency. Yeah, like we gained like 3 to 4K over the previous turn just because our caps were more efficient. Now he's going to catch up this turn. So it kind of ends up evening out, but you can see, so the shift here, yeah, everything consolidates here. But we stayed disciplined on our positioning. And then this turn, this is the turn when I knew, like, okay, we're not going to be in any threat of losing this city. And so ultimately it's up to my opponent to figure out a way to flip a property. And because this matchup is so defensive favored, it's a really difficult position to be in. So I really think that this greedy opener, the fact that I was able to basically get this city for free early on, and then it triggered a fight in territory that was not really favorable for my opponent, and then giving up on this property as well, put me in a very strong position, even very early in the game. And so you can see there was a copter here ready to reinforce this fight, but because it's an anti-air that's defending the harass, this stuff, it's totally useless. They can't do anything. It's also very hard to fight with air units on this side of the map. It's a very tough dilemma because Sidewinder needs to have infantry in order to credibly threaten this base. But the only way to really build infantry without crippling your fight is by getting air units. But the air units are all the way over here, and the fight's all the way over here. So it's not ideal. But did a good job having enough funds available for the bomber so they could at least arrive to the fight when it did. And he made me thinking, like, he just YOLO'd the bomber in here. Like, it's such a dumb move. But in my opinion, the way that the game was going, I think he had to try something. It was a pretty good idea. I don't blame him for thinking that there wasn't going to be like a backup anti-air, considering he saw. So you see this anti-air, and you know that this anti-air is on the other side of the map because you just saw it over on this city. So like, what are the odds that there's a third anti-air? Like, it's not crazy to think that there wouldn't be one. So I think it was a measured risk that didn't pay out, but I still think it was sound, given the way the match was going. But by this point, it is... well, by this point, that was obviously the turn where there was no way back. But even here, like... ultimately, one of these properties has to be flipped by the end of the game. And it's just hard to imagine any way that could ever happen. Okay. We reached the end. We didn't quite hit 2 hours this video. I guess it's because we didn't have a map review. All right, well, that's going to do it for this commentary. Hilariously, Smacky Cup 5 just started tonight as of the time that I'm recording this video. So we're still doing videos for Smacky Cup 3, and we're already on to, Smacky Cup 5. It begin again. So yeah, I guess we'll probably have more videos for that as that tournament goes on. I'll have to win some matches first in order for that to happen, but we'll see. I do think, though, I will I'll say it now to warn everybody, but should I go on to win either Smacky Cup 3 or Smacky Cup 4, if I win one of them in Smacky Cup 5, I'm probably going to start playing a little bit crazy with some of the strategies because I'll feel like I have a license to go a little bit nuts and not worry about tryharding so much. So you should. So if you want to see some like wacky crap, you should be rooting for me to win one of these tournaments, because if I do, then I'll feel like the handcuffs are off and I can go a little bit crazy and maybe do some like experimental stuff, or non-traditional stuff in the tournament setting, which can always be a lot of fun and provide some hopefully some interesting matches. So we'll see if that ends up working out or not, but certainly got a lot of work to do still in Smacky Cup 3. The finals are going to be no joke, because no matter who I go up against, it's going to be a really skilled player. So that's going to do it for me. Thanks for watching if you've made it this far. Subscribe to the channel, ? If you like this, if you learned something, and we'll see you next time. Good night.